Hello and welcome back to ZIM Explore. I am Dr. Abstract, and in this Explore we're going to look at a pen planet. How exciting. Let's go to see the example now. So we are going to draw on this planet, and we can drag our drawing. Woo! Isn't that cool? We can change the pen color too. There's another one. Something interesting happens when you draw across this little line. You see what happens? So if I start here and move to the other side, it wants to go all the way around to the other side, which is kind of cool because then you can draw rings around the planet if you want. These also move about, so you can move them. And isn't that cool? We can undo. That undid the move of the ring. And we can also clear. And there's a confirm. So let's go in and take a look at the code, how this was made. It is also a CodePen pen right here. And so you can come and see that. We'll put the link into that. And you may as well join CodePen. It's a great place for front-end developers, well, any developers, I guess, but primarily front-end developers. And we have a lot of pens here on ZIM. This was for a CodePen challenge for spheres, and we are using ZIM with Three.js, so that we're bringing in Three.js. But rather than look at the code in CodePen, which we can do, I've got a version of it in the editor, and then we have this local version here too. So let's go in, take a look at the code there. So we're bringing in Three.js. We have a lot of information in here. Well, this is ZIM and Three.js. We have a lot of information in here about ZIM and texture actives. And so these are the uses of texture active, how it works, examples. In the examples, we did add this one as well, which is a newer example. /studio. And this has, I don't know, 60 something, 63 examples. Let's put 63 examples. Here we go. So if you haven't seen texture actives before, come to ZIM. There's a few ways to get into texture actives. They were launched in ZIM 015, so you can go to the What's New or hit this thing right here. Go to the ZIM 015. And this is all texture actives. There's the studio. Here's examples. We have also information out on the Three.js forum about this as well, on Three.js Discord. And there's a whole texture active studio site here as well that has helper videos and all of the examples. So there's a pen, and we use the pen for our example. There's also one, if we go back to these guys, this one right here has a HUD. So that's when you put ZIM, and this one has a HUD too. When you put ZIM around the edges, but it's still within Three.js, so that means it's all integrated. And then this is Three.js, so this is the HUD, an ortho scene, and then this is a normal 3D scene. So all those are there for you to look at. But let's take a look at specifically the code that we've got going on here in our current app. We're going to map onto a sphere eventually. This would be the background color of it all, including the Three.js, if we didn't add down here a skybox. So in Three.js we added a skybox from that picture out on CodePen. We don't need to worry too much about that. because our texture active right here is taking up the width and the height. And really, you only see the texture active, so it'll use the color of the texture actives rather than the stage color. Mind you, if you made these transparent at all, because we've got the skybox there, this looks nice against the transparency. It also makes it so that, well, may as well draw something here. See how we can see through it. So this is the texture active on the sphere, and we're drawing on it, and you can see through it. And if we set the opacity down, you can just barely see through it right to the background as well. But you can set the opacity of this down even lower, or the alpha, and then you can see almost right through it. That looks cool too, but I think it looks better against the dark. So that's what we've done. We can play with that if you want. No, we do it right now. Say if we set that to 25% and refresh here. Now we've got the 25% opacity on our planet. That looks cool too, huh? I mean, this is just beautiful. All right, let's see what else we got going on. Bring that back to 85. We want to draw with the pen. So if we want to draw with the pen, we don't want the orbit controls to work on the background or the backing of our texture active. Does that make sense? Otherwise, that would move the orbit controls. So if we didn't have this, then when we go to draw, we move the orbit controls too, and that causes a bit of a problem. Okay, so normally when we do a texture active, we usually do want to move the background. I can show you an example of that. Whoa, take it easy there. So here we have, see that? So I can drag this, but the backing of our texture active, I don't really care about. I don't, as long as I can interact with these things, that's good. But if I press on the backing, I want it to all move. Well, we don't want to do that when we're drawing with a pen, because if we picked it up to draw with the pen, we would end up moving the backing. So yeah, we don't want that. By default, that's true, so we have to turn that false. All right. A couple other things. If we're drawing, we don't, anything that we draw on, the pen won't work, or the motion controller, the pen won't work on things. And that helps us if we have a button here. You don't always have the pen all on its own, on a container of its own. Here we've separated out the interface from that, but usually if we're drawing on a flat piece of paper, you have the big piece of paper, you've got your interface right on the piece of paper in a sense. And if we pressed a button, the pen would go to the button, and we don't want that. So by default, the motion controller, and motion controller is used for more things than just a pen, it's used for other things. Imagine you're controlling a game player and you hit the, I don't know, the next button, and all of a sudden the game player goes to the next button. He says, no! So by default, the motion controller only works on the background and not on anything that's put there. So this text right here is put there. So if I didn't turn and this line is put there, and that little sphere is put there, and if I didn't turn the mouse false on that, I couldn't draw on these things. Oh, how'd that happen? I couldn't draw on these things. And I want to be able to draw on these things. So when I first arrive here, if I do this, I want to draw. I don't want it to not draw. So we've set a style here, mouse false. You can also set a no mouse here, no mouse. And in the past we'd have to do that, but in the latest version of ZIM 018, we've added a mouse style so that we can turn the mouse off with a style. ZIM's got style. Just make sure that if you want to use the mouse on any other things, like the pen or the surface that we're adding it to, then we want to make sure that that mouse gets turned off. So that turns off that style and it will no longer do that. But for the label and these rectangle lines, we do want to do that. We could make lines, but we've just made rectangles, but we could also use lines. Now that I see that we're actually drawing lines, probably could have just used the ZIM, a new line. And there's some spheres. Where are the spheres? Can you see them anywhere? Table, surface. They'd be circles. Sorry, circles. Circles, not spheres, but I'm still looking for the circles. Control F, circle. How do we get those circles there? Rectangles. Surface is the texture active, so they need to be there. Oh, okay. Right. We're mapping on a sphere. So let's take a look at what this looks like. T. So if I hit T here out in my browser, then I can see all the texture active parts. So that's a texture active. This is a texture active. The Z is a texture active. And this big rectangle is a texture active, or big square is. And here's the rectangle that we drew on the top. Here's a rectangle that we drew on the bottom. And when we map onto the sphere, those rectangles at the top and the bottom turn into circles. Here I'm looking for a circle. Ah! All right, these are the other lines we've drawn too. Right on the very edge, the left edge, and across the middle, we've drawn a line. And by the way, this is live, so I can draw on here, and when I hit the T key, it goes back, and those drawings have, ooh, they're nicely done too. It's not easy to get a drawing that goes all the way around like that, or a pen, because you can only drag so far. Oh, we just we just bounced off the front. I'll show you why that happens too in just a sec. But if I go this far, I can't go any further. See that? But let's clear this. Confirm. If I hit the T key here, I can draw a nice pattern all on this whole thing like that. Even kind of end it right at there. Okay, I'm going to pick it up and move it around. And then when I hit the T key, that's just been drawn all around my world. Nice. That's not really intended to work like that. I mean, I suppose it could be, but it gives you an idea of what's happening here. So what is happening? We can go over to here, right here, and clear this in the same way that I cleared it. So basically, that's what we've done with ZIM, and each of these parts is mapped onto something in Three.js. We then do raycasting to find out where the mouse is and pass that right back into Create.js, and that flows through into ZIM. So what's happening when we cross this line right here is as I draw, drawing's not working, as I draw, I will get to the end, the edge, and so if I drew here and my mouse all of a sudden goes way over here, then the drawing continues from over here. And that's what happens. So it doesn't happen here on the flat thing because my mouse doesn't wrap. But as soon as my mouse wraps and I'm still pressing down, it wants to go way over here. So that gives you the following. There's stuff we just drew, but we'll clear that. So this edge right here, if I start here, it wants to go there, and that's fine. But as soon as I go on this side, boom, it shoots and wants to go way around to the other side. So you can use that by just sort of booping across the line and draw these little booms right around the planets. Isn't that cool? Okay, so there we go. Anyway, let's get back to the code here. Oh, that's not the code. There we go. We have our label that is positioned there on the surface. Remember that when you add things to ZIM now, quite often if you work in ZIM, we usually just add to the stage and it automatically, so if I just said center, it would center on the stage. But that centers on the stage, and so watch what happens. Refresh here. Our center line's gone. It's back on the stage somewhere, but we can't see it because only the texture actives are mapped in here. So there's no point in putting anything directly on the stage. Instead, we want to center it on our surface, which is our texture active object. And then we take that texture active object, and a little bit later, down below here, in our texture actives, we pass the texture active to a texture actives object, which handles the mappings. We also have a whole bunch of, well, 3 different texture actives that are being passed to this ortho one, which is a different scene. That's the orthographic scene. Okay, well, we'll come to that stuff later. So we'll concentrate here mostly on the texture active aspects of what we've done, but I don't mind if you're coming in from the 3JS side, you might want to see what ZIM is like to work with. It's a lot of fun. Now, we've done Explore videos already for that, so you're welcome to go back and look. I think we did Explore videos on almost every example that we've done with texture actives. And we did some bubbling videos too back in the day when we launched it in ZIM 015. So those are complete videos as well. You might want to check those out. Okay, so we've got, that's a Google font, by the way, that we brought in there, right there. And to bring in a Google font and preload it, you just GF underscore and then whatever the Google font name is. And that preloads the font. And then we can use that font, which was where? Here. We are positioning that, and when we mouse down, we're animating its alpha to 0. So it starts off with it showing there, but as soon as we mouse down on the surface, it animates out. We bring it back again later too if we clear and confirm the clear, then we animate it back in. We also, in this case, we animate it out right away, but when we clear, we let people see it clears, and then so we had a 1 second delay on that. If it looks like it's delayed, that's on purpose. Okay, so that's that. Then we have some colors that we're going to use. These are ZIM series, which is part of a ZIM v-value. So in other words, every time we call this color, it's going to be purple, then red, then silver. And note that our pen right here is calling this series to start. So the color of the pen is this series, and that's why when we draw with the pen, it is those colors in series. We could randomly make the pen. First of all, a pen doesn't even have to look like that. So the default pen, we better have a color on the default pen. I guess we could have it just a default pen. This is going to be a thin pen then. Oh, it's not all that thin. Oh, because we're animating it, right? So I forgot we're animating the pen as well, the size factor. So we'll comment out the animation of the pen. And there is almost an average pen, except we've got different colors happening. So if we said instead, the color is black by default, so I don't want to do black, so we want some sort of color red pen. Read that. Okay, because we're on a black background basically. All right, so that is a normal pen. If you've been sort of thinking, oh, this would be really handy, I'd love to be able to draw on 3JS things, but you know, why does it have to look so weird? It doesn't look weird. We made it look weird. So the pen is highly customizable, and we'll show you a little bit about that. So there we are. We're about to undo those, and we can clear them and confirm. Okay, isn't that cool? So what's going on with the undo? Something broke on our undo. I don't know why. Oh, because you have to say how many undos you want. So 30 undos. So by default, there aren't undos, but we can ask for them. So now we can do undos. Bing, bing. All right, there we go. So that's a normal pen, and that can be very functional, obviously. But we made it a kite tail. So by kite tail, the color would be like this. And there's a whole bunch of different settings for it. There's a kite tail, like that. There's splatter. Splatters dark, different colors, like splatter with red. Not quite as nice because its its opacity is up. Usually our splatter, we don't do that. Okay, and remember you can pick these things up and move them about. There's city, grass, hair, splatter, barbed wire, kite tail, just a normal pen. But that's not all you can do. You saw that when you set a series, you can set a series. So, splatter would be nice under the series. So let's do that. So instead of doing a color of red, now we can splatter in a series. Much nicer. Okay, and you can set how much big and small you want to go, etc., etc., etc. That would allow us to change color as well. So if I go to that, I've now got a different splatter color, and here's yet another splatter color. Can't really tell if that's doing it in a series, but if you don't do a pen type, that's a straight line, and a straight line is even kind of exciting with the series. We should give it that a bigger size. So give it a size of 10. Okay, so there it draws segments of the line in that. It's kind of funny when you do sizes. So if you put a random, or if you put an array of numbers, then you get something like this. So now it's going to randomly pick a size. That looks cool too. Can make these sort of strange robots. Robot planet. So the pen's pretty amazing. An array randomizes. If we wanted random colors instead, we wouldn't use a series. We would use an array. And that gives you random. So now we are going to, instead of a series of colors, there's Sometimes they're the same color. They're random colors. Series are also cool. You can, let's repeat these things. So we'll make a series here. Messing everything up, huh? It is a ZIM Explore. So we'll go 30, comma, 100. And comma there. So now we're a series here, but random colors at the moment. But if we bring back the series, oh darn, I should have, well, okay, put it back, I guess. So let's have a look at this. So now it's more exact what we've done here. But you see how all the big lines are alternating there? Is that because we have a series of 3? Maybe that's just a series of 3. Let's try these. A series of 2, what will happen? Ah, yeah. Okay, so now it's like alternating purple. What I was going to say is you can actually, with the series, you can also say dot every 2, and that would now alternate the colors. So that's waiting every 2 before it changes. So the big ones and the little ones are now alternating. You can shuffle, you can bounce, you can, or rewind, I can't remember if it's bounce or rewind. So there's all sorts of things you can do with the series, pretty well anything actually. And I'm going to just undo though and bring us back to where we were. Or you can pass in random numbers or mins and maxes, so you could set a min and max object as well. That's probably good. We're centering on the surface. I think we want to center on the surface. So we back to normal. Looks like it. And what we did here, a little bit extra, is we animated the pen. So we animated the size factor of it, and that animates it up to 20 times bigger in 0.3 seconds, and then it rewinds and it loops. If we didn't rewind, you get this sort of a neat pattern as well. How you guys doing? We're drawing on a planet, but it's almost like it's a pen tutorial here. Neat. Make these lamps. So I noticed that I made an NFT called the Lepton Lamp Lords. It's almost exactly what it looks like. These Lepton Lamp Lords. Now we have a planet of them. You can also animate the position of the pen. And so for Lepton Lamp Lords, we didn't let people draw. We just animated the pen from the top to the bottom. And we always started the pen at like that rather than like this, which you can do as well if you want. Isn't that neat? We got a planet of a bunch of pens. We have a problem. Normally you can click and hold on it to delete it, but the problem is the planet's moving, so we have no way to delete a specific one at the moment. So I suppose the one thing you can do is kind of try and drag it. Oh, undo. Kind of try and drag it into the void here. Anyway, there, that one's gone. Anyway, there's our planet of Lepton Lamp Lords. Oh darn, I should have made some different color ones. 2 different colors right on the end there. And the upside down lamp lords. Cool. So that's what happens when you don't rewind. You just loop. And you can also set different easings. And you see how that actually shows the easing. But if you do different easings, you can get ones that, like if you set a linear ease, you'll just get triangles instead of, it would be ease colon linear, no, in quotes, comma. And then well, like I said, I'm not really, we weren't intending on doing, okay, so now they're almost triangles aside from the warpature of the sphere itself. I wasn't intending to do a Explore on the pen, but isn't that cool? It's excellent. And then our motion controller, we pass it the pen. We're using press move, so that almost always goes with the pen, just those two. As a matter of fact, if you have a pen, I could have just taken this whole pen and stuck it right here and didn't even store a pen. It's important to set the container to the surface when we're working with the texture actives. Normally it's the whole stage, but you want to do that, and we don't need that. It's just experimenting with some things. Okay, so there's our pen. And note that that pen did get added to the surface, but we're also setting the container of the motion controller to the surface. That's important. And our surface, remember, is this guy, the texture active. So that's the surface is the planet. Here's the texture actives for the HUD. We've got we're preparing for a title here. We've made it clear. We haven't bothered making that interactive and animated. That just means that we don't have to do the raycasting on it. Okay, by default it will be interactive and animated. If it's not interactive, you can still do an animation. So if we could animate this, and then we wouldn't want to set animate to false. So animate false, it doesn't even update the cache because it's just done once and it gets put on the texture. So this, just a reminder, this is actually in 3D or in 3JS as an orthographic view. This is not an orthographic view, but it's a texture active, and all these are texture actives. And that's handy, so you don't have to play around with overlaying HTML and stuff. You can stay within ZIM and place things around the edges. Is that nice how that works? Okay. So we worked hard to get that to happen too. Here's the panel. The panel's gone down below there. And we're adding a color picker to the panel. We're adding an undo button and a clear button. And these look a little bit lengthy, but look at what we're doing. When we clear, we have a confirm there. And so if we don't confirm, that goes back to a clear. But if we confirm within the time, then that's it. So that's nice usability, all built right into there without like a pop-up window and stuff like that saying, are you sure? So that's this stuff. So we changed the background color to red. That's called a wait. So there's what it says when we're waiting. And you can do that for other things too, like loading something. You can keep the wait there until it loads. And then when we mouse down on the clear, we need to use a mouse down on that. And if the clear is sort of waiting, like if it's in the wait state, then that means we clicked on it again. And we're going to clear, we're going to turn that wait state off so it just disappears right away. We clear the pen, and we're also going to animate the label back in. So that's what that's doing. The undo button's quite simple. It's a button that says undo, and we're going to tap it. I've changed this in you might be looking at the CodePen version. We did this slightly differently in the CodePen version, where we just made these things, and then we scaled the tile. Is this even using a tile? Yeah. Then we made a tile, and we scaled the tile to the panel. So rather than scaling each of these things, we just put them into the tile. So that's us saying, hey, put these things in a tile, 3 columns, 1 row, 30 spacing in between, 0 vertically, and treat these as unique things. Otherwise, this would be a ZIM-V value, and we would get random parts of those. You want to see that? 0 is the default, so that wouldn't matter anyway there. So now we have 2 color pickers and 1 undo. Now we've got 3 clears, 1 clear and 2 undos. So you might be going, oh my God. But remember, that's the ZIM-V value. So if we pass in an array, it will randomly tile from that. We could pass in a series here and tile in a series. But rather than do that, the series is still tricky because it will possibly clone the series. We don't want to clone these things because they've all got events on them. Well, some of them have events on them. Yeah, I think they all have events on them. So we don't want to clone them. And by putting comma true here, that stands for unique, and it means treat the things in the array as that's what we want to tile, only those, and keep the same ones that we had. Don't try and tile clones of them. So a little bit tricky, because ZIM Tile was initially made to make art, tile a bunch of stuff. So usually we tile a circle, and it tiles a whole bunch of circles, and it clones them. We can use the ZIM V values to tile a whole bunch of random circles. We can use a series to tile the whole bunch of circles, colors in a series, etc., etc. Then we found that we wanted to use the tile sometimes to layout interface. You know, like we used to in HTML, we would lay out stuff in a table. Then HTML found that they want to use instead either grid or what's it called, the flexbox. But ZIM's got that kind of stuff too. We, instead of using tile, well, tile is actually more flexible than an HTML table. In other words, you can actually collapse a tile so that it takes only the space for a row or a column. So that's a bit different. But we also have wrapper, which will wrap things like a flexbox can wrap. And we've got pack, which packs things in. And we've got something else too. Oh, the layout class, which is much like flexbox as well for anything, even if it's not tiled. Okay. So here we're making a tile of these interface elements. Great. And there we are making an icon that when we click on it, so that's the ZIM icon. When we tap on it, we're going to go to zimjs.com in a blank window. We've set an alpha of 0.8 and a hover on that. That could all have just been done f.madewith, because we have a made with ZIM icon. Should have probably just done that. But then I didn't want the words made with, but I forgot I could just pass in quote, quote, and not get them. I didn't want the words made with ZIM because it's also made with not CreateJS, but 3JS. It is also made with CreateJS, but we sort of like enveloped CreateJS. Whenever you use ZIM, we use CreateJS, so it's a well-known thing. But this also uses 3. Maybe I should put a 3 logo on the other side. Yeah, that would be a good idea for us to do. So we'll do that after. A little one right here of 3JS. So thank you, 3JS. We can put ZIM into any 3JS surface or shape or whatever as a texture. And then we can also put 3JS into ZIM if we so desire. We can have all this be ZIM, and we can just have a 3JS 3D object that we can drag around, etc. Change. Operate with ZIM components. Okay, so there we go. Now we come to the 3JS part, and here we're using the ZIM helper module, which makes 3JS a lot easier. I don't know if you recall setting up your 3JS, you guys. That's done right there. All right, plus we've added an ortho version and the texture active, so normally we don't even have to have these. And that would be all of your setting up your, what's that thing called? Your rasterizer. No, that's not the right word. Your renderer, your camera, your scene. So this does it all. We then get a 3.scene, 3.camera, and 3.render. And rather than use those constantly throughout, we're just storing them in local easy variables to use so that we can pass them into places like a camera and controls and scene. Oh, controls are something different. Yeah, so that's nice. Bring these back though. We are asking for an orthographic view as well, our scene, and that makes 2. It does. There is no way to make just the ortho. I don't think. I can't remember. But it doesn't matter. Just don't use the other scene. It's no big deal. But this will add an ortho scene as well. So we get a normal scene like usual, plus we get an ortho scene. And then to make texture actives work, we set texture active true on our 3 object. So this scene, camera, and render is for the normal, and this is for the ortho. We're making a skybox. We're using orbit controls. We added a few things here to the orbit controls so that it's a bit nicer. So for instance, here is orbit controls normally, where it moves directly to the mouse, like that. And then here is orbit controls with damping. Where we can sort of throw it. Nice, huh? So it's not ZIM, that's orbit controls. Here's the texture actives, and we have information about texture actives. There's where the that's the docks. So often you'll just have one texture actives object and you pass in all of your texture active singular objects to it. You pass in the 3JS reference, the ZIM 3 helper module reference, the render, the scene, the camera, and the controls. You can use this with raw 3JS, so if you don't want to use the ZIM version here, which saves you, I don't know, half your code sort of thing, maybe more, you can just use raw, and we have examples of raw, I think, up at the top here. There's a link to HUD raw and just normal texture active without a HUD raw. Okay, so we have those examples, but those more code for you to do. So our controls are texture active, great. We are making a sphere. We're making a canvas texture from the surface canvas. So that's our texture active, but for a canvas texture to work, it needs to be a canvas that we pass it. So we pass it the surface's canvas, and that surface is being dynamically updated. So the texture actives object here will apply the raycasting to our texture and pass that raycasting into ZIM. So we need to tell the texture actives to add a mesh for the sphere so that it'll raycast the sphere for us. And if we wanted to, we could have said just raycast layer 1. Then we would have had to say layer 1 here. But right now, we got is raycasting all of the surfaces, which is no big deal because we only have really the sphere and the skybox. So if we wanted to avoid raycasting the skybox, then we could have passed in 1 there, or 2, or 3, or whatever layer we want. All right, so there's our sphere. We didn't quite finish this. Right, so we have canvas texture, and that's what we're mapping onto our material, and that works with any material, basic material. Well, maybe not Lambert. What's the one they call that? It works with Lambert, works with Phong, works with basic, normal, mesh normal. Yeah, mesh normal it doesn't work with because it's something different. Okay, Phong gives us a sort of this reflect glowy kind of feel to it, which is nice. And we've got a light up in the top. So this pink circle really is just the rectangle, but a light is on it as well. And that light is kind of bouncing around on the sphere or something like that due to the Phong. So if we change this to Lambert, we wouldn't get that effect. Lambert. Oh, T. See, there's a bit of light happening on that, but you don't get the glowy effect. I don't even know if... light will also be on that versus this. So this is blue light down at the bottom. So you see how that looks versus that? They look different. Because we've got pink light at the top and blue light at the bottom, and it actually acts on the ZIM stuff on our material. That's phenomenal. There's basic material 2, which wouldn't, the light wouldn't affect it. So now when we draw on it, it looks a little bit dull, doesn't it? And they're exactly the same. So that's no lighting, basically. So you can see that it does make quite a difference to operate with your lights. Mind you, that's a gray that we've got in there in the pen, so we could have brightened that up a bit using a lighter color at that point. Let's bring back the Fong material. And we bring back the Fong material and draw on here, and it's like quite dramatic, isn't it? Lighting has made that brighter. You have that nice little billiard ball glow, although it is a planet. All right, so this is normal 3JS stuff aside. Well, it can do a canvas texture too, but this is a special canvas texture that we map the ray casting once again. So we capture ray casting on it. That's what the texture actives does. Takes the ray casting, passes it into CreateJS, and we built that into CreateJS so that it replaces the mouse or pointers, and that bubbles right up into ZIM. So anything in ZIM we can now use interactive on a texture. And there are people in 3JS almost solely, it seems, and it's kind of disappointing, solely wanting to put logos on t-shirts. It seems to be the main use of, oh, we want a canvas texture so we can put a logo and move it around on a t-shirt. It's like, oh. We can do that, and we provided nice examples, nice simple examples of doing that kind of thing. But we can do so much more. We can play whole blown out 2D games on any surface, including on models on 3JS. And people just aren't quite picking up on that yet. It's just like kind of like, oh, it's frustrating. We propelled 3JS ahead of the game. Like there's other competitors out there, Spline and stuff like that, that are, their big announcement was that they've got two-dimensional interactivity in their 3D world, and all they've got are a couple buttons for interface. We're like 100 times that, and it's here and ready. So anyway, hopefully we'll get there eventually. Maybe it'll just take 10 years. Apparently sometimes that's how long it takes. 10 years. 10 years people will start using it. Yay. Okay, blobbity blobbity blah. So that's normal 3JS stuff aside from the surface canvas. And then this is ZIM right here. So the texture actives object that we made, this is ZIM2, ZIM. Texture actives object has a method called add mesh, where we say, hey, we want to watch what's going on in that sphere. So that's how it knows we're dealing with the sphere. Okay, this is how it knows that we have the texture active, and then that's being mapped on to the sphere, but nothing told the texture actives that we had a sphere, so that's us doing it. Down below here, we simplified it by, oh, this is lights. So there's our lights. Just watch, if you're using point light, we had to stop for a little while using point light because they changed their lighting back in whatever, 155 for 3JS. And the lighting just didn't work. It was crap. And then there were reasons for that. And one of the reasons is we have to now increase the intensity by, in theory, by pi divided by 2 or something like that. But we found that it's actually even more than that because they changed the type of lighting. So our intensities had to go up. And for point lights to work, if we don't include the 0 here, that means that's the drop off. It has some very small drop off, so it's like the lights just don't, the point lights don't work on things anymore unless you're really careful as to where to put them. So we just said add the 0 here and they started working again. But for a while we were using the directional light because we couldn't get point lights to work. So in a lot of the texture active examples, you'll see directional lights. I don't really know too much about the difference between those two. I guess there's some difference, but now we've known, and then halfway through those examples, we realized how we needed to fix that. So we started using point lights again. And then there's your ambient light as well. Let's see what happens if we don't have an ambient light here. I'm not sure how strong our point lights are. Oh yeah, that's quite dark. But there's our purpley light, and here's our bluey light operating on that. But we would need the intensity of these guys to be quite up. So let's set it to 5. I don't know, 5's going to make it. Might have to be 10. Yeah, we're getting some light up at the top there. That's good, but no light on the... we get it on the bottom, but no light around the equator. That kind of looks cool, though. I wonder if that would be nicer, and then bring back this. But let's try 15s on these and see how far they'll reach. There's still that equator which gets no light. And then but watch this. So that's me dragging into the pink and dragging into blue. Isn't that cool? But the equator's not getting much. But wow, look at that intensity in there. Whoosh. Okay, so we definitely need a ambient light in the middle. But let's drop this down to maybe a 10 and see what happens if that shows a different... Kind of looks nice. Now I can't see that much of a difference. I mean, I can, but it's not terribly effective, and it just makes this sort of weird whatever glow happen. Yeah, I don't need that much glow. So we'll put it back down. It was, which was 2s, I think. All right, and now we get a slight glow in there. Oh, and bring back the ambient light. Right. Okay, good. We are also rotating the sphere, which we don't have to do. By the way, we could use ZIM to animate it, like ZIM, like animate round brackets the spheres thing too, and that can look really cool. So there it is, not animating, but once again, we could have, if we wanted to, said something like sphere dot. I'd have to do all the scales. Well, I could scale it about the x. Let's just see what this looks like. So sphere scale about the x is equal to 0. So now we shouldn't see the sphere. Kind of. So there it is, but it's really, really skinny. And now we'll animate its x. Animate. So we're using the animate. Normally for ZIM, I would go sphere dot animate, but sphere is not a ZIM object. It's a not CreateJS. It's a 3JS object. So instead, we'll use the animate function, which still works on anything. It works on CSS. It works on 3JS. So much like GreenSock works on anything. Actually, ZIM animate is pretty well on par, if not beyond, GreenSock. There are things that we can do that GreenSock can't. For instance, we can animate along user editable paths, that kind of stuff. All right, so anyway, animate, and we will animate the sphere. The props is scale. I think we have to use scale dot x, and we'll set that to a value of 1. And now we should see that come in. Probably. Wow. So, if we look quickly, we can see that just grew the scale. So we could animate the scale, all 3 scales, and animate that in. But that's a normal one. If we animate in with an ease of elastic out, for instance, and let's increase the time. Actually, the time is the next thing. So time is here. How about 3 seconds? And we'll make that elastic out, and we refresh. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, check that out. Isn't that cool? And if we wanted to, we could still rotate the planet. I was going to say we could animate the rotation by putting a rewind or like a loop on there. I guess a loop, and make sure that it's linear. Okay, so that just animated its scale in. And we could still draw on it. So ZIM's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's us rotating a ticker. We now come to the orthographic scene, ortho. So we made another texture active. We need to do that because we're on the orthographic scene. So now we're doing the orthographic scene in the orthographic camera. Same renderer, same controls. I don't think the controls actually affect the ortho. And then we're passing in the 3 texture actives. We're using Make Panel. So this belongs to our 3 helper module, Make Panel. And that's handy. That makes a 3JS plane, but it does everything that you need to do so that we don't have to do all this stuff right there. So we don't have to do these, and we don't have to do that. And if we had put the number 1 on a certain layer, because we pass in the texture active that we're using, it would just use whatever layer that texture active is using. So we don't have to, like if that texture active were on layer 2, it's okay because the Make Panel passes in the texture active, and so when it does that, it knows to make it layer 2, and they're added to the scene. So we don't have to do that extra texture actives add mesh because we already told that we're making a mesh in the panel, so that's all built in. So that's nice, huh? If you want to make a UI panel, that's it. It's just one line to make the panel, and then you can add it to whatever scene you want, or add it to whatever place you want. Amazing, huh? So that's our title texture active, our panel texture active, and our logo texture active. We've also added for orthographic only. The panel, by the way, the panel works on non-orthographic as well, and it's nice there too because you can curve it. So we really like the curve panel. Remember the curve panel here? So there's a curve panel. Look at the back on that. Oh, lovely. Curve panel. Okay, so that's not orthographic. Did we do that in other ones too? We probably did in other ones too because the curve panels look cool. Okay. But where did we get to? Yeah, so there's the Make Panel. Yeah, and you can curve the panel. As mentioned, so we did that. That's it, I think. Those are all going... we're adding the HUD title that we just made. Oh, pose. We're talking about pose. So ZIM has pose, and it does this kind of stuff. But this is a different pose, slightly different. Same concept. It's basically like CSS is left, top, right, bottom, if you're familiar with that, except we also have center, which would be really handy if in CSS they did that, wouldn't it? Be able to position things just center like that. Like, what do they do? Left, center. Oh yeah, center, :0 pixels. 0 from the center, that would be. And so we do that. We've got center, we've got top, we've got left, right, bottom. So this is 0 from the center, 30 from the top. This is 0 from the center, 30 from the bottom. This is 100 from the right, 25 from the bottom. But this guy right here is different than our normal ZIM pose. So the next thing on ZIM pose usually is what container we want to add it to. Here, the pose doesn't matter. We have no container. We're not interested in that. It's always just the ortho scene that this happens to be added to. So this number is how much, if we didn't have that, here's what would happen. Take this away, demonstrate it, I guess, is how much that thing can go in. So there's the Z we're talking about. And if I squeeze this, you see how the Z, it's kept its distance, but it just overlapped stuff in the middle. Okay, so that's what that number is. It says don't go past whatever we had there, 680. And if I wanted to, I could say don't go past 800. Let's have a look. So here it is, staying on its edge. But if I come to here, right there, that's 800. and now it goes off the screen. So I want to come in, allow this to come in right about into here, so I get it on the screen on mobile, for instance. So that was, my guess is 680, and you can see that we're rather specific there. Pacific. We're rather specific there. Didn't refresh it. There it is. Oh, maybe I did. Didn't save it. One of these things. Yeah, didn't save it. Didn't save. And refresh in here. And there it is now, going in further. So we could probably even make it a touch tighter. It's almost to the point where we're hitting the planet. So I think that'll be all right. Whatever. Okay. There she be. Woohoo! This has been a ZIM Explore. Oh my goodness, was it a long one? It's an hour. That's a usual one. That's about actually how long it took us to code that. It was about an hour. And good luck doing that on any other with any other framework. I mean, imagine that. We just coded that in about an hour. We're pretty good at coding with ZIM, but you see there's really not all that much stuff here. A lot of it's quite simple ZIM stuff that you get well used to and can do it quite quickly. I am Dr. Abstract. We'll catch you later, huh? This has been a ZIM Explore, and it's nice to have you here. So come on into zimjs.com/forum or zimjs.com/discord, and we'd love to talk to you. So we're happy folks. Come on in. TextureActive is pretty cool. Welcome to ZIM if you're coming from 3JS. Welcome to 3JS if you're coming from ZIM. Cheers.